I've already been out for a long walk this morning to get my exercise on, and now I think it's time for breakfast. And I really am craving a really nice cupcake. But cupcakes aren't normally breakfast food, unless we decide to make them using honey and granola. This is a really fantastic cupcake that doubles as kind of a breakfast muffin and also uses some healthier sweetening options rather than pure white sugar. So you see in front of you everything that we're going to need today to make this work, from our big old mixer with our paddle attachment to all of our different ingredients, as well as a mystery rolling pin. You'll be finding out what that's for in a little bit. So the ingredients that we need today are flour. We've got 200 grams of plain flour here. We also need granola, about 2.5 cups. In this case, it's 215 grams. And you'll see here, I've got fruit and raisins in my granola, and that will work perfectly for this muffin. I've also got 100 grams of packed light brown sugar. I have 60 milliliters of milk. They call for skim milk in the recipe. I'm using soy milk because I have it left over. In this small bowl, I have my 3 small dry ingredients. I have a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. I've also got here 115 grams of unsalted butter that's at room temperature. It's got to be nice and soft. I have here 60 milliliters of plain yogurt and some vanilla extract. I'm going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of that, but I didn't measure it out beforehand to waste a dish. I need 2 eggs at room temperature, and then finally I need, 125 milliliters of honey. Now honey is really hard to measure, so I actually used my scale and found the equivalent, and that's going to be 165 grams of honey. So in just a second, we'll get started with the process of making our honey and granola cupcakes. I've just started preheating my oven to 175 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll notice that all of my ingredients except my granola have disappeared. This recipe very rightly says we shouldn't use granola with big chunks in it because they'll make big chunks in our muffin. But look at that. That's a big old chunk. So here's what we need to do. We need to crush up our granola. So that's why I have a handy plastic bag and a rolling pin, because there is no better food hammer than a rolling pin. So we are going to empty our granola into our plastic bag, and we're going to hold it shut, but we want to make sure that our granola is kind of, it's a flat layer. It's not in a big old pile, and you don't want air in your bag, because if there's air in your bag, you could burst your bag and then granola everywhere. So we're going to take our rolling pin. I apologize for the noise. If I get around to video editing, then I'll definitely probably silence this. But we're going to whack evenly on our granola until it's as small a chunks as we want. And that's looking a lot better. So we're going to empty our granola back into our bowl. And though there are still some larger chunks, if you wanted to, you could go through and break these up with your fingers. But it's looking much, much better, much more muffin or cupcake consistency. With all of our ingredients back, it's time to continue with the making of our cupcakes. The first thing we're going to do is cream the butter, the honey, and the sugar together, which we've done in other recipes. So I'm going to find my spatula. We're going to empty the butter into the mixing bowl here. I'm just going to take my paddle off to get it out of the way. We're going to empty the butter into the bottom of our mixing bowl. And remember, creaming takes 2 to 3 minutes. So we're going to start on low and then mix this at medium speed until it's fluffy and light colored. We'll add our sugar to the bowl. Oopsies. We'll add our sugar to the bowl. And finally, we'll add all of our honey. There we go. Then we will reattach our paddle, begin mixing on low, and then mix on medium speed for 2 to 3 minutes. Alright, so I've just stopped my mixer, and my sugars and my butter are now creamed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape down my bowl. And then we're going to add the eggs one at a time. It's very important that we add them one at a time so that we get everything mixed properly. And then after I add one egg, I'm going to mix this all again on medium for a couple of minutes in between each egg. So it'll be add an egg, mix a couple minutes, add an egg, mix a couple minutes. And that will then give me time to do my dishes as well as to mix together my dry ingredients. So what I'm going to do is dump this into here, and then while this is mixing off camera, I'm going to stir this around with a fork and get it ready, okay? So let's drop in our first egg. I'm going to crack it on the table. Not hard enough. There we go. I'm going to drop in my first egg. Start mixing on slow, low, and then kick it up to medium for a couple, 2-3 minutes. Alright, I've just stopped my mixer on my second egg. And you can see here we have a nice fluffy mixture. And we've almost come to the end of our mixing. So I'm going to scrape down my bowl and my paddle. And the trick with cake is when you've got really wet and dry ingredients like milks, yogurts, your flours, your baking soda, your baking powder, all of that, is we are going to add it to this batter alternatingly. In other words, we'll add some flour mix, we'll add some wet mix, we'll add some flour mix, we'll add some wet mix, and back and forth and back and forth. Which means that we have to mix up our flour and our other dry ingredients, get those nice and combined. But we've also got to do the same thing with our yogurt, our milk, and our vanilla. So I'm going to empty my milk and my vanilla into my measuring cup. And I'm also going to use my scraper. Yes, it has a little bit of gunk on it, but that's okay. I'm going to empty my yogurt into the same measuring cup, and then I'm just going to stir them together. And that way I will be able to easily pour this liquid into my batter. Mix, mix, mix. It's okay if you see lumps or anything, that doesn't really matter. We just want to make sure that it's going to pour when we want it to. So now, every other time we're going to start by adding about 1/3 of our flour mixture. I'd say that's going to be about 4 or 5 spoonfuls. 3.5, because that was quite a bit. And always on low, we will continue to mix. Always on low. Just until it's mixed together, and then we can add about 1/3 of our liquid. We've got about 110, 120 milliliters here, so we'll add maybe 40 milliliters. Just like that. That looks about right. And then on low. So we're going to scrape down our bowl one last time, but it looks to me like we have some absolutely delicious cupcake batter here. We do want to make sure that all of the flour and all of the milk are incorporated. I'm going to take this paddle out and scrape it off and get rid of it because we don't actually need him anymore. We've only got one ingredient left to add, and that is the granola, and we're not going to add that using the paddle. You never really want to put fruit into a cupcake or granola or anything with the paddle. You want to do that by hand. So that's looking pretty good. Pop our bowl off the mixer, and actually we're going to move the mixer out of the way. There we go. And give ourselves a little bit of room. I'm also going to trade up for my slightly larger spatula because he's going to help me get all the granola in there and will help me scrape the bowl a little bit more efficiently. So we scrape. Looks like everything got mixed up really, really well. So all that's left now is to add our granola to our batter, which I have right here. This looks like a lot of granola. I don't think I'm going to add all of this. I'm going to start there. You add as much or as little granola as you would like. And you have to make sure to get it all in the batter, even the bottom. That can be pretty tricky. You know what, I don't actually think it would be bad to add just a little bit more granola. There we go. Look at that. Alright, there is our finished cupcake batter. So we're going to scrape off our spatula, make sure all that cupcake goes back in there, and in just a second we'll be ready to put this in our muffin cups. Alright, with freshly washed hands, it's time to fill our muffin cups. As we've done in the past with our blueberry muffins, we're only going to fill these about 2/3 full because we don't want our muffins to explode out of the muffin cups. And you can use a muffin tin or a muffin pan with the little holes already in it with paper liners, but I prefer to use these silicone muffin liners and a cookie sheet. So we're going to have our spoon handy, and I'm going to start with a pretty good full spoonful and just plop him in there. I can see I will need a little bit more of the batter, so I'd say about a spoonful and a half is what we're aiming for. That's actually absolutely perfect, is a spoonful and a half. Alright, here we have 17 perfectly filled little cupcake forms. It'll be time to pop these into the oven. We're going to bake these for approximately 25 minutes, but the best way for you to be able to tell, check them at 15 minutes, check them at 20 minutes. You can do this two ways. You can stick a toothpick into the center of one of your cupcakes and then pull it out. If it comes out clean, the cupcake is finished baking. Or you can very gently press your finger at the top of a cupcake. If your fingerprint is not still there, if it springs back up, then your cupcakes are ready. Let's go bake. So our granola and honey cupcakes have just come out of the oven and they look absolutely perfect. I'm actually going to get you guys just a little bit closer to the cupcakes themselves to show you what a done cupcake looks like. I take my finger very carefully, press, you can see that the cake springs back up. The other way we can tell is with a toothpick. If we insert the toothpick into the middle of the cupcake and it comes out clean, then we have finished cupcakes. So we're going to let these cool for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll actually be able to take them out of their silicone liners, let them cool completely, and then enjoy.